93% of people, roughly, have got a wall around their heart. And so it's harder for them to really feel things. We've had people, multiple people over the years, who have told us that for the first time in their life, when that wall is taken down, they can feel the love of the Creator for them. How amazing is that?
Hello, I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast. On this show, we talk about everything related to heavy metal and chemical detoxification and the health issues caused by toxins. But I also love to talk about emotional detox, emotional trauma, and how emotions can cause our physical health issues. And that's why I'm so honored today. We have Dr. Bradley Nelson on the show. He's going to be talking about his latest book, The Heart Code, and how 93% of people have a heart wall that is preventing them from feeling joy, from getting and giving the love that they deserve and they're seeking in their life, from preventing them from living their life purpose, from feeling in general, and can cause a lot of psychiatric issues, anxiety and depression, and just people just generally just feeling gray and blah. And so we talk about what a heart wall is, how to release the heart wall. Lots of really, really interesting stories of transformation after people have released their heart wall. And we talk about how to do that, how simple it is to do that. And Dr. Nelson is the author of the, phenomenal book, The Emotion Code, where he goes into detail about how to identify the trapped emotions that you have and how to release them. We do a demonstration of that on the show today. Just really, really a fantastic show. You got to tune in. And so our guest today, Dr. Bradley Nelson, he is a holistic chiropractic physician. He's a best-selling author. He's a creator of the Emotion Code, the Body Code, the Belief Code as well, which are simple healing methods used by people in over 80 countries to release emotional energy and restore balance. He's the author of the Emotion Code and the Body Code, and his newest book, The Heart Code, focuses on the heart wall, a protective barrier around the heart that can block love, connection, and healing. With over 30 years of experience, Dr. Bradley is known for his compassionate teaching style and deep faith. And through discoverhealing.com and his website, drbradleynelson.com, he continues to share his work with a worldwide community devoting to helping others feel whole again. Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, Wendy, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? And you've had a phenomenal success with your book, The Emotion Code, international bestseller. I think it's published in, dozens and dozens of languages. Tell us like how you got started on your path.
Well, it's kind of a really interesting story. When I was 7 years old, I was sick with the measles, and my mother asked my father if he would pray for me. And I knew the plan. I'd heard my parents talking, and I knew that the next day they were taking me to the hospital, and I was going to be admitted and put into something called an oxygen tent. That's what they were talking about. And so, so that night, everyone else had gone to bed, and my parents had made a bed for me on the couch in the living room so I could be near their bedroom. And my parents came into the room, and my mother asked my father if he would say a prayer for me so I'd be able to get well. And so they knelt down by the side of the couch, and my dad offers this prayer. And in the middle of this prayer, this change happened. It started at the top of my head, and it went to the soles of my feet, and I was instantaneously healed. And to go from being really sick and nauseated and feverish one moment to being totally well in the next instant, that was really the beginning of my whole journey. And I remember that like it happened yesterday. And it taught me that there is a higher power we can draw upon. And it also taught me that healing doesn't have to take place over a long time. It can happen instantaneously because it did happen to me. And so that was interesting. So um, about 7 years later, I ended up with kidney disease, and and I was healed from that. Western medicine had nothing to offer, and it was quite serious. But I was pulled through that by some holistic doctors. This is a long time ago now, but I decided at 13 that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to be a natural doctor like those guys. And so Then I discovered computers and I became a computer programmer and went a completely different direction with my life. And and then eventually it was a very powerful answer to prayer that brought me back to the healing arts. So I went into practice and became a chiropractor and had my own practice for about 18 years in one form or another. And it began to dawn on me when I was in practice that what I was really dealing with these individual patients that were coming in to see me was that I was dealing with a computer, really, that there was a computer within each patient that could give me answers about things. And I was really just putting together pieces of this puzzle, I think, that had been found by other people over many, many years. But but I was able to refine this, and uh, and it got to the point that it didn't really matter to me what a person had been diagnosed with or what symptoms they were suffering from. I knew that the answers were all within them. I knew that their subconscious mind, you can call it, their internal computer, would always know exactly what was wrong with them, if they needed some kind of a nutritional supplement, if they were toxic in some way, if they were dealing with emotional baggage or some kind of energy traumas or acupuncture imbalances or imbalances of chakras or pathogens, whatever it was, I could identify those things. And so over all of those years, this is really what I was doing, was working with people day in and day out and learning how to communicate with this computer within each person. And that computer, it's really interesting. If you think about the computers that we're used to, for example, I've got a phone here, right? And this is a computer, and it has a screen, and you can touch it. So it's called a touch screen. That's how you communicate, right? I'm sitting at a laptop. I've got a screen. I've got a keyboard. So that would be a screen slash keyboard interface. But this computer that is within each one of us, I believe, is the most powerful computer really that exists in the world. We like to think that Chat GPT is super powerful and so on, and it is. But the computer that is within our own body, I think, is powerful beyond our ability to really comprehend. They say that the average person has about 37 trillion cells in their body, and every single one of those cells is equivalent in complexity to a full-size aircraft carrier with thousands of people working on board at different jobs and with jets ready to take off and so on. That's a single cell. And the subconscious mind, I believe, absolutely is in touch with every single cell in the body. If you wanted to ask questions about a single cell somewhere, I have no doubt whatsoever you could ask questions about that single cell and get answers from the subconscious mind. And so the subconscious knows everything. It knows all about your DNA. It knows all about every organ gland. It knows what your biological age is versus your chronological age. Different organs, different joints in the body can actually have different ages like that. And so it's been just mind blowing, really, for me. Since age 13, I wanted to be a doctor. And I remember when I was in chiropractic school one day in neurology class, our instructor was up at the board and he was kind of riffing on how the brain is a computer. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, the brain's a computer. And I was a computer programmer at the time. And I remember thinking, wow, I wonder if we'll ever have a way to access that computer because, man, there must be a lot of great information in there. And I remember thinking, well, probably in 200 or 300 years. Little did I know. So, so that's kind of been my journey. Mhm.
And now a word from one of our sponsors. Two of the most powerful supplements for women's health are whey protein and creatine. Studies show that women have about 70 to 80% lower natural creatine stores than men, which impacts our muscle function, muscle recovery, our brain functioning, and even our mood. Pure Creatine Plus combines pure creatine monohydrate with taurine to support muscle strength, performance, muscle recovery, faster workout recovery, and cognitive health as well. And I love the results of taking creatine. I honestly had never taken creatine before in my life before I started taking the Pure Creatine, and I absolutely love its effect on my mental clarity. And it is also especially beneficial for both pre and post-menopausal women as well. It's shown in research to support bone health, improve cortisol response, support thyroid function, and so much more. And like everything that Puree makes, each batch of Creatine Plus is third-party tested for over 200 harmful contaminants, and it's clean certified by the Clean Label Project as well. So you're only getting clean, safe ingredients. And the test results are published online for complete transparency. All you have to do is scan the QR code on the bottle. Now let's talk about whey protein. So protein is essential for women. A lot of people are not getting enough protein. And many protein powders on the market are loaded with toxins and heavy metals and harmful contaminants. But the Clean Label Project reviewed over 160 top-selling protein powders in the US and found that 47% exceeded California Prop 65 safety limits for lead, with 21 containing double the acceptable amount. And so that's horrifying when you think about it and how many people are drinking protein shakes daily, believing that they're doing something healthy. And so that's why I use and trust Puree's PW1 whey protein. I absolutely love the vanilla flavor. It tastes incredible. I love the dark chocolate also. Like it tastes like a fancy chocolate milk, but it's clean and safe, not like a lot of other cacaos and chocolate products on the market. And my daughter Winter loves the vanilla flavor. She loves making smoothies. And recently, Vogue also named Puree PW1 whey protein the best overall whey protein powder. And for all the right reasons, if you ask me, like I said, my daughter's making smoothies daily, and I have peace of mind knowing that she's using this protein powder that's clean, pure, and safe, and it's been tested for purity. And so here's how I use the PW1 and the creatine every morning. I make a shake with coconut water, a scoop of the PW1 protein and the creatine plus, and I add berries, maybe a banana, some dates, a little pinch of salt. And that helps me stay strong, focused, and energized throughout the day. And I know that I feel good knowing that I'm fueling my body with truly clean supplements. And so go feel the difference for yourself. Taste the difference also. Go to puree.com/Wendy and use code Wendy at checkout for 20% off. Again, that's PUORI.com/Wendy. And that code even works on your already discounted subscriptions, giving you almost a third off of the regular price. So don't wait. Go try the PW and the Creatine Plus today. Clean, science-backed supplements that you can actually trust. Again, go to puree.com/Wendy and use coupon code Wendy. Yeah, yeah, you have a new book out called The Heart
Yes.
Code, which I'm really thrilled about. Because it's, you talk about the heart wall in that book.
Wow.
And it's interesting. I've been working with a person that does recall healing, and we've been breaking down my heart wall as well, which is it's really interesting work. So tell us what the heart wall is and how you discovered that.
Absolutely. Well, so so first of all, let me explain a little bit about what I came to call emotional baggage. As I began to learn from the subconscious minds of my patients what they really needed, I was actually shocked because it seemed that all of my patients, no matter how young or old they were, no matter what they were suffering from, they all had something in common. What they had in common was what I came to call their emotional baggage. And emotional baggage, it gradually became clear to me that emotional baggage is really the energy of an emotional experience, of a powerful emotion that was not processed. Either that emotion was buried because the person didn't want to feel it, or they artificially enhanced it and flew off the handle and, you know, made it bigger than it needed to be, or they experienced something that was just emotionally overwhelming. In any of those conditions, what can happen is the energy of that emotion can remain in the body. Because when you feel an emotion, as strange as this may sound, When you feel an emotion, what you're really feeling on an energetic level is a particular vibration, right? Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so when we feel an emotion, if you're feeling an emotion of anger, your body is actually vibrating in a different frequency than if you were feeling an emotion of grief and so on. And so what happens is when we go through these experiences in our lives that we would rather not go through, like being bullied or going through a divorce or breakups or whatever, we all go through things from time to time. That's life. But sometimes the emotional energy of those things can stay with us. Well, um, what we have found is that these trapped emotions, what we call them, uh, and that's what the emotion code book is really about, that first came out in 2007. Um, what these things do is they distort the normal energy field of the body wherever they land. A trapped emotion is literally a ball of energy from about the size of a baseball, about the size of a softball, and they can lodge anywhere in the body. And wherever they lodge, they will tend to distort the normal energy field of the body. And when you distort the normal energy field of the body, you're really just distorting the body itself because that's all the body is. It's just made of energy. And so that interferes with chemical reactions in those tissues. Um, Blood flow, lymph flow to some degree, the flow of acupuncture meridian energy through that area. And so these things will cause physical symptoms. Um, in fact, in our experience, and we've certified 15,000 plus people now in 108 countries around the world, we're all finding the same thing, that emotional baggage is the cause of about 90% of people's physical pain. Think about that. Think about all the pain clinics all over the place that you see driving around that are giving people drugs, not really fixing anything, right? Just band-aiding things. If they stop taking the drugs, the pain is still there. But imagine 90% of all that pain is really because of emotional baggage, because of emotional events. And that's what we have found. And that is absolutely the truth. Well, it's not only pain, but it's also things like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and post-traumatic stress, and also things like self-sabotage and an inability to lose weight and all kinds of things. But also another thing that we have found is that every disease process has, at least every disease process that we've seen now in about 35 years, has had an emotional component to it. And sometimes that emotional component is a major piece of the puzzle. Sometimes it's a more minor piece, but it's always there. So anyway, that sets the stage because emotional baggage, those energies that get trapped in the body, are very, very real. Well, so let me tell you about the heart. Um, Back in the 1960s, when doctors first started doing heart transplants, I remember there was a big spread in Life magazine. I was a kid, but I was always so into anything medical or health related. And Dr. Richard DeBakey was the guy that did the first heart transplant. Big deal. And after that, they became more routine. But one of the things that happened that was unexpected was that after a while, doctors noticed a strange phenomenon that sometimes certain patients would come back to them and they would report strange goings on. They would report, for example, that their taste in food had totally changed since their heart transplant, or sometimes their taste in music or sports. Sometimes they would report having new memories of being in foreign cities that they never in their life had ever visited, right? Isn't that so weird? And of course, there are books written about this. And in every case, when these people were connected to the family of the donor, every case that I've ever read, they would always find out, well, yes, our daughter visited Paris every year. It was her favorite city in the world. And now you have memories of being there. That's weird. Those must be her memories because you've never ever been there. Um, and the same thing, with food and sports and music and so on. So the ancient peoples believed that the heart was the most important organ in the body, and it was a very special organ. That it was really the seat of the soul and our source of love and creativity and romance. And those ancient ideas come down to us today, really on Valentine's Day, right? If you're lucky, someone gives you a box of something really yummy that's shaped like a heart, right? And that's from those ancient ideas. But in the West, if you go to any Western biological textbook, you'll see that the heart is really just a pump. And it wasn't until the 1970s that they discovered that the heart had lots of gray matter and white matter in it. Um, 40,000 dendrites, gray matter and white matter, like the brain itself. And we know that most of the communications that are traveling between the brain and the heart are actually traveling from the heart to the brain, which, was something that was a very odd finding for scientists. But I believe that all those ancient civilizations were right on the money. That the heart is everything that the ancients believed it to be. And we now know that if someone is feeling love or affection for another person, their heartbeat can become measurable before long in their brain waves, and their heart rates will synchronize and so on. So, what happened was a very, very interesting experience. One of the craziest experiences that I've ever had in my life, honestly. It was 1998, and my wife woke me up early one morning and told me that she'd had a dream. And in the dream, there were three symbols. And when she woke up, she had this understanding that these symbols were uh, representative of some issues that she hadn't dealt with. And she asked me if I would help her to figure this out. So I said, okay. And so we figured out the first two things, which were a couple of, as I recall, a couple of inherited emotional energies that we had not found before. Now, you can inherit trapped emotions, emotional energies at conception that you get from your mom or dad. They might have gotten them from their mom or dad, and these can go back for many generations. So we cleared those. And when I turned my attention to the third symbol from her dream, suddenly I had what I can only describe as a waking vision where the room, we were actually in a hotel at the time, the room disappeared. And instead, I'm seeing this absolutely gorgeous, beautiful hardwood floor. And I know this sounds so strange, and it was so strange, uh, but it wasn't frightening or anything. It was just suddenly I was seeing this thing, and I was totally at peace. And at the same time that I'm seeing this unbelievably beautiful floor, I have this understanding that comes into my mind that my wife's heart is underneath this floor. Now, this wasn't just a blip. This lasted for about probably 3 or 4 minutes. And so I told my wife what I was seeing and understanding. She had no idea what this meant. I had no idea what it meant. So we said a prayer, asked, higher power, God, to help us understand this. And then I started doing some testing on her. And one of the ways that you get information from the subconscious computer is through muscle testing. And I didn't invent muscle testing, it was invented long ago, but by somebody else. But you can get information from this binary subconscious computer system. So I started asking questions and getting, strong answers for yes and a weak muscle for no on my wife's body. And what we found was that there was a wall that had been put up around her heart, and that wall was made of layers of her emotional baggage. Literally, her trapped emotions had been moved uh, to where they were surrounding her heart, forming layers of emotional energy as a protective mechanism around her heart. And we found that this had first formed when she was 2 years old. Now, a little history about her. She was born into a pretty dysfunctional family. Her father, uh, you'd say, was a rageaholic. Okay, he didn't drink, but he was always flying into a rage without any notice, and nobody knew who he was going to blow up at, who was going to be next. So everybody, I mean, the whole time she was growing up, everybody was kind of on pins and needles. Um, he was a good man in every other respect, but just kind of very difficult that way. So we found out that around age 2, she had begun to put up a wall. Now, this is a totally subconscious thing. She had no idea. Nobody knows they've got a wall like this. It's a subconscious thing. The subconscious puts up a wall around the heart to protect it because it's everything the ancients believed it to be. It's the seat of the soul, source of love, creativity, romance, everything else. And so she started this wall. And so we asked if we could start removing these layers of emotion. And her subconscious mind said yes. So it took about 2 weeks of releasing these emotions, and we'd be able to release maybe one or maybe two in a day, and we might have to wait a couple of days. And every one of these emotions had to do with something that she remembered in her life. A couple of her sisters were raped at different times, and so those energies were there. There were different kinds of energies uh, from different events that now I can't totally recall. But anyway, the price that she had paid for having this wall, because there's always a price that you pay when you've got a heart wall. And the price that she was paying was that it was difficult for her uh, to feel happy. It was easier for her to feel uh, negative than positive. She battled with depression and anxiety. She also always felt like she didn't really belong anywhere. Even with friends that she had known for years and years, she always felt like she was the odd person out, like she didn't really belong. And when the last emotion that was forming that wall was taken down, all of a sudden, that all shifted in a really dramatic way. And so I remember Wendy in the very beginning, when when we were just being shown this thing, because I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined that this is actually something that goes on with our bodies. Um, so it had to be shown to us. I never would have figured it out. But I will tell you this, that during the years I was in practice, when I would work on people and I would clear emotional baggage from them and get them to a point where they didn't seem to have any more, there were times when I would come away just feeling like, there's got to be some other emotional baggage because of things that they had been through in their lives that, maybe there wasn't any emotional baggage that showed up for those particular events and things. And I would just think there's got to be something I'm missing. I had that kind of a gnawing feeling. And in the very beginning, I thought maybe my wife is the only person in the world that has this. But now we know that we think it's about 93% of people on average that have put up this wall. And so the problem is when you have a wall like this, it makes it much more difficult for you to give and receive love because love is not, a noun. It's actually a verb, right? It's an energy too. And so when you fall in love with somebody, um, I don't believe that happens with the brain in your head. I think that happens with the brain in your heart, but it's much more difficult if you've got a wall around your heart. And I'll share some stories with you. Um, One of the very next people that we saw that had a heart wall was a nurse that came in to our office, and she came in for neck pain. Her neck was about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale of pain, 10 being the most you can think of. And she'd been to a couple of other doctors. They hadn't been able to help her. So she came into my office, and I remember doing taking a history on her and everything. And she told me she was 38 years old, and she was single, and she had not dated in 8 years, and she was never going to date again. And she was really determined about this. She was going to die single. And I said, "What? Why do you feel that way? How did you arrive at this?" And she said that 8 years before, she was really in love with this guy who dumped her and betrayed her and broke her heart. And that was it. She wasn't ever going to date again. It was just too painful. So so I brought her back into my treatment room and I started testing her and using muscle testing, asking questions, getting answers from her subconscious binary computer subconscious mind. I found that she had a heart wall and started releasing these emotions that were making up this wall. There were three layers in her case, three trapped emotions making up this wall. And I don't remember exactly what they were, probably betrayal and grief and sorrow. I don't know, things like that. But anyway, there are three emotions. And so one at a time, we released those emotions. This whole process probably took 5 minutes, right? As soon as I was done releasing the last one, her pain level internet went from a 9 to a zip, 9 to 0, boom. And she was thrilled because that's what she'd come in for. So she left the office um, feeling fine and didn't come back for 3 months. And I'll always remember this. I saw her in my hallway and I remembered her immediately because she was the only, her story was so interesting, right? She was the only celibate woman basically that I'd ever met. And I said, hey, how are you? What's going on? She said, she said, my neck has been fine since I was here, but she said, you cleared that heart wall for me and that really works. She said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out that my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years. And we're dating and we're in love.
Mm.
She said, I think he's going to ask me to marry him. Right. And I just thought, wait, I thought you were celibate. But think about this, okay? This guy, her childhood sweetheart, had been living for 8 years right around the corner. She'd never run into him in 8 years. Isn't that crazy? Why? Well, because she had this big wall that had been put up, right? And so you see, finding your soulmate and creating the life you're capable of is really all about the heart. And when that wall was taken down suddenly and her heart suddenly was open again, it only took a couple weeks. And boom, there he is. And we see this kind of thing all the time. So if you think about your own life and you think about what you've been through, were you bullied as a child? Have you been through difficult things? Uh, did your parents divorce? Maybe you've been divorced. Maybe you've been through breakups and deaths in the family. I mean, all kinds of things. We all experience life, and life can be really difficult. But if you felt like your heart was going to break at one point, and we know that's a physical sensation, right? It can feel like there's an elephant sitting on your chest, um, like maybe like you're choking, like you can't breathe.
That can
And
be
that happened.
physically painful.
Yes, exactly right. So you've experienced that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I have too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you used to cry yourself to sleep at night when you were a kid, um, you know, uh, we go through those times, and when your heart is under assault, and when you can feel that, what we call heartache, right? And there's a word for that in every language that I've looked at so far. The subconscious mind wants to protect the heart because it is the core of our being. And so it'll put up a wall. Well, it can't put up a physical wall. That doesn't work. So what does it do? Well, it puts up a wall made of energy, right? It puts up, it's like, kind of like a force field, and it's made of these layers of emotional baggage. And it's really, it's such an amazing thing. But when that wall is taken down, we find people fall in love often who never ever thought they would. Um, People's creative ideas begin to flow spontaneously because the best creative ideas that a person will ever have will not come from the brain in their head, right? Those ideas will come from that brain in their heart. And I believe there's a perfect blueprint within that brain in a person's heart of their life and what their best life can be. But when you go through life and you receive all these blows and you build up this big wall, then you go through the rest of your life kind of handicapped in a way. And so it's really interesting. I'll tell you, one of the next people that we actually worked on, um, this woman brought her son in to see us. He was 9 years old. And the problems had begun when she found that he wouldn't hand in his homework. Sometimes he wouldn't do his homework. And even if he did it, sometimes he wouldn't hand it in. It was just like something was not right. And sometimes she'd come into his room at night, and instead of being in his bed, he would be on the floor. And she'd say, what are you doing on the floor? And he'd say, I don't deserve to be in a bed. Right? Kind of alarming if you're the mom. Like, what is going on? Remember, he's 9 years old. And so she took him to see a psychologist and a psychiatrist and didn't get any help there. Was essentially told that he was clinically depressed, but that he couldn't be helped because he wouldn't admit that he was depressed. And he kind of walked around with a grin, kind of almost more like a grimace, just kind of pasted on. Like I think it was like he knew he needed to be happy and he should be happy, but he was not happy. He was really depressed, but yet he had this kind of this sort of a fake grin. And I think that's how he was dealing with it. Well, one day his mother paid a surprise visit to his school, um, unannounced, and found his teacher in the middle of berating him for being pathetic because she couldn't get anything out of him. He was just kind of unresponsive in a lot of ways. And that was it. I mean, his mom took him out of school immediately and then tried to do homeschool with him. And that wasn't working at all. And so she just did not know what to do. So, anyway, she found out about the heart wall. And so she brought him in to see us. And my wife and I, did some testing on him, muscle testing, and found that he definitely had a wall. Now, it was really interesting. What had happened in his case was that there were, I think, three trapped emotions making up this wall, three trapped emotional energies that had built this, wall around his heart. And each of them had to do with a tragic thing that had happened in their family somewhere. And one of these trapped emotions was about a car accident, and one of the cousins was killed, and another one was another accident where uh, where another cousin was killed. Actually, I remember it was a like a hay ride, and one of the cousins fell off this hay wagon and was run over by this tractor. I mean, just tragic. So we cleared those emotions, and there was only one emotion left. And here's the story. Um, this family was at a family reunion at a lake, and this little boy was 5 years old at this time, and he was there, and his big sister, was 12 years old, and she was the designated babysitter for him, but also for this other little boy, 5 year old, his best little friend, another cousin, and they were out on the end of this dock, and his big sister was trying to teach their cousin, this little 5 year old boy, how to swim. And his body disappeared underneath the dock. And it was I think about 45 minutes or so later that the divers had to recover his body and pulled him out from underneath this dock. And of course, his body was blue and he was long dead. And the uh, the overwhelming guilt that this poor girl was experiencing, I mean, absolutely overwhelming, was a frequency, an energy that she was feeling. And that guilt became absorbed into his body and immediately formed into a wall around his heart, um, because his heart was breaking, right? For her and what had happened on her watch. And I can't even imagine um, how awful that would be. And also, he had just lost his best little friend. And so that was the last emotion. And it was the emotion of guilt. And I think that was what was driving his feelings of sleeping on the floor and saying to his mom, "I don't deserve to be in a bed." Well, when you feel total guilt, then that drives that kind of response, right? Anyway, we cleared that emotion, and muscle testing said there was no more heart wall. So his mom took him home, and for the next couple of days, he was just kind of lying around, being really lethargic, and she was thinking, well, it doesn't look like that really worked either. I don't know what to do. But we knew what was happening was that when you clear trapped emotional baggage, the body has to go through a period of processing. And so sometimes it can just sort of wipe you out a little bit. You might need to rest. That's what was going on with him. So on the morning of the third day after we worked on him, he got up early. He got his little backpack ready, got everything ready to go. He's 9 years old, remember. He comes downstairs, and And this is what he tells his mom. He says, "Mom, I can go back to school now. I'm a happy pappy." It's a direct quote. And he did go back to school. And all of his learning disabilities were gone. And he went into the program for advanced kids because he was doing so well, right? And the fake grimace that he had had on, the fake grin, that was gone. And she told us later that he was back. He was back and he was completely normal. And she said, she told us afterwards that if she had not been open to something so different from the norm, that her son would not have survived. And I absolutely believe that, because I mean, he was so severely clinically depressed, diagnosed as clinically depressed at 9 years old. I mean, how would he have been doing when he was 14 or 15? It just would have
Yeah.
been hopeless.
And now a word from one of our sponsors of the Myers Detox podcast. So I want to tell you about a lip peptide treatment that I've been using, and I've gotten amazing results. And it was created to help you restore smoothness, fullness, and lasting hydration to your lips while protecting against visible signs of aging and environmental stress. And what I love most about this lip peptide treatment is that it contains True Energy's signature proprietary biophoton frequencies to enhance cellular communication, optimize ingredient absorption, support collagen production, and helps lips maintain their smooth, fuller appearance over time. Something I'm really into right now at age 53. And honestly, I can't ever see myself using any kind of skincare unless it has frequencies in it that enhances its effectiveness and sends new information to your skin and to your lips to improve their appearance. So this True Energy peptide contains plant-based botanical oils, vegan moisture sealing waxes, and a collagen boosting clinically studied peptide infused with True Energy's signature frequencies to condition, smooth, and energize lips for a healthier, more youthful appearance. And each ingredient is also sourced to meet high purity standards and doesn't contain any synthetic fragrances, parabens, toxic ingredients, or harsh petrochemicals. So if you're ready to smooth away the look of fine lines around your lips, maintain lasting softness and hydration without stickiness, enhance natural lip volume and contour, protect against dryness, flaking, and environmental damage, and energize your own lips repair and renewal cycles, True Energy is offering a BOGO special, so you can buy one, get one free for a limited time for my listeners only. So go to trytrueenergy.com/Wendy3. So it's TRYTRUENERGY.com/Wendy3 to get a buy one, get one offer. This is something that I use every single night. I absolutely love this product. Highly, highly recommend it. Yeah, and that's what I love about your work is that it's so easy to do the emotion code and it's so quick and you just can't access these emotions with just talk therapy, with just going to regular therapy, and they're not thinking about trapped emotions, they're not thinking about emotional trauma. I mean, in the same way on an energetic level and
Right.
accessing those, what emotions exactly, because you know, a lot of these emotions, they're unconscious. We're not consciously aware of them to access them, to discuss them. And so they get completely overlooked. And that's why your work is so, so important because it's we all are dealing with this stuff. We all have transgenerational trauma. We all have you know, traumas that we think we resolved that are still affecting us today and dramatically affecting our physical health and our relationships as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You know, one of the most interesting cases I think that I saw that really highlights this, how the conscious mind just does not know things that the subconscious mind knows, and the subconscious knows everything. I remember I was at I was doing a little presentation one time for a bunch of people, and as people were coming into this hall, I was meeting them, and I happened to meet this young woman who arrived with her mother. Later, as I was talking, I wanted to demonstrate how we find trapped emotions, and so I asked for a volunteer. And this young woman came up. She was about 21 years old or so, and I asked her if she had any problems, and she said no. And so I said, okay, well, let's see if you have a trapped emotion. And so I had her hold out her arm parallel to the floor, and I asked, do you have a trapped emotion we can release? And the answer was yes. So strong arm is yes, weak arm is no. That's that binary nature of the computer. And we teach all of this in the various books and things. But anyway, let's see. Okay, so what showed up was she had a trapped emotion of forlorn. And forlorn is kind of feeling all alone and hopeless and desolate and kind of all rolled into one. And and so I asked the subconscious if we needed to know more, and we did. And so then I thought, well, okay, let's figure out when this happened. And it went back earlier than 10, earlier than 5. It happened during the first year of her life, forlorn. And I thought, well, she's not going to know anything about this. So I asked her, do you know anything about this, what it might have been? She had no idea. But remember, I had met her and her mother when this thing was started. And I looked out of the audience, and there's her mother, and she's as white as a ghost. And she's got her hands kind of covering her mouth and nose, and her eyes are like saucers. And I said, I said, hey, do you know what this might be about? And she was really embarrassed, but she said she thought she did. She said that when her daughter was a baby, she used to use cloth diapers. And one day she accidentally pinned her daughter to her diaper, right? So the safety pin went through her daughter's
Mm.
skin, and she didn't know it until she changed her the next time. So probably several hours, her poor daughter is just in all this pain and no one's helping her. And her mom must have been really overwhelmed. But anyway, so she feels this emotion of forlorn, which makes sense, and that emotion becomes trapped in her body. Okay, so that was it, and I released it, which just takes a few seconds. This whole process probably took 5 minutes, maybe less. So she goes back and sits down. So I finish the lecture. I go home. About 10 days later, this girl's mother emails me, and here's what she said. She said, Dr. Nelson, and I have to paraphrase, of course, but she said, Dr. Nelson, my daughter has had a problem with her hip and her knee uh, for about, I think she said about 10 years. And she said she has pain in her hip and in her knee, and it's been slowly, gradually getting worse over years. She just kind of lives with it and ignores it. So when you asked her if she had a problem, she said no, because she just lives with it and thinks it's kind of normal. But she said it's gradually been affecting the way that she walks. It's been affecting her gait. And we've taken her to a number of different places and tried to fix this, and nothing has ever worked. But she said the moment you release that trapped emotion of forlorn from her, from being pinned to her diaper at age 1, that pain just has vanished.
Oof.
It has not come back. She said her gait is completely normal now. She's got no knee pain, no hip pain. She said not only that, she said my daughter's feeling this new lightness of being that she's never felt in her life before, and she's telling everybody about this. She said, I waited 10 days because I thought maybe this was a fluke. I just couldn't believe it. But she said the pain is not coming back, and she's still feeling great, and her gait is normal. She said, I just wanted you to know what the aftermath was of what you did. Now think about that. I mean, she had no conscious memory, right? So just as you were saying, Wendy, I mean, she could have gone into some kind of talk therapy, but would they have identified what really happened? No way. The subconscious, however, knows everything. You can't lie to it. You can't hide from it. It knows everything, including inherited emotional baggage. And by the way, inherited emotional baggage is something that we all have, because we all have ancestors who went through traumatic things at one time or another. And if it was difficult enough, then apparently what seems to happen is those energies are passed down. We seem to receive them at conception. Um, Scientists know that this happens, that there is inheritance that goes on. They really don't know how it's working, but we do. It is a quantum phenomenon, and we call those inherited trapped emotions. And those can actually become incorporated into this wall around your heart. And so these can be part of the heart wall as well. And we've seen that many, many times. Not unusual at all.
Yeah, and that's why I love your work so much. I'm doing it with this recall therapist this recall healing therapist I'm working with, because I recently broke up with my boyfriend because I didn't feel like he was my life partner, and I want to find my life partner, and I felt like I just felt like there was some resistance there. So I started working with this person, and we cleared that. We found I had a heart wall and cleared that, cleared a lot of transgenerational trauma, fear, hopelessness, and
Awesome.
shame, and some other things. And it's just surprisingly so simple. And in following, releasing this heart wall, I felt so much lighter, so much more optimistic,
Yeah.
so much more engaged, like wanting to find someone. And I feel like it's also a communication to the universe, like, hey, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yes.
I'm open. I'm ready to receive. And it's just such a simple thing and so powerful.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that when that heart wall is opened, that energy, that pure essence of who you really are and what you really want and what you really desire, um, that just immediately starts going out into the world, out into the universe, and then things start being drawn into your life that otherwise might not end up being drawn into your life. And that's the beauty of this and the power of this. And that's really why my wife and I, even though in the Emotion Code book that came out in 2007 as a soft cover, and then in I think 2019 as a hardcover, there's a chapter in there called "The Walls Around Our Heart," and so you can learn how to release the heart wall in that book. But it was only one chapter, and it's so important. I mean, it has been called the most important discovery in the history of energy medicine. And I don't know, but the reason why we have written this book is because we really wanted to shine a really bright light on this whole phenomenon again, right? One more time to bring this to people's attention because the heart is absolutely what the ancients believed it to be. And by the way, this is also about your physical health. So when I was in practice, Wendy, what I used to do, and by the way, during the last 10 years of my practice, most of my patients had been told there was really no hope for them at all in Western medicine, that they'd never get well, that they were going to just live the rest of their life with their symptoms. And those were most of my patients. Most of them, the vast majority of them, were able to get well. Um, and what I would do with these people is I would always do an initial exam on them, but it was a different kind of exam from a normal exam. I do a normal exam also, but I'd also check things like um, the balance of all the organs and the glands in the body, and all the chakras and all the meridians and all the other parts of the body. I checked to see how well the brain was communicating with the body and so on. Sometimes with these people, and by the way, every single one of these people that I worked with for all those years, every single one that had really been diagnosed with something major and considered incurable, every single one of them had a heart wall. And sometimes what I would do is after their initial exam, and it was not unusual to find that it was not unusual to find most 90% of their organs and glands were imbalanced, right? Most of their chakras, many of their meridians. Sometimes with these people, I would just do one thing to prove to myself how powerful this heart wall, uh, this heart wall clearing is. Sometimes with those people, I would do their initial exam, and then I would just clear their heart wall, which might take 2 or 3 sessions, and then I would retest them. And I would inevitably find that 80% of all their organs and glands, chakras, and meridians were all balanced suddenly. Isn't that interesting? Um, and that really showed me how powerful uh, the getting rid of that heart wall really can be, because the heart's communicating, I think, to every organ, every tissue in the body all the time. I really do believe that the heart itself is the seat of the subconscious mind, and so I think that's why when we feel when we're really deeply grieved or being hurt, we feel that heartache we talked about, that physical sensation. But by the same token, if you're maybe listening to someone that's singing beyond their own natural abilities and they're really truly singing from their heart, that your heart will begin to resonate with their heart. We've all had experiences like that, and you'll start to get tears in your eyes, and you'll instinctively put your hands over your heart because you're feeling it there. And if you look around, you'll see all kinds of other people with their hands over their heart, right? And tears in their eyes. The experiences like that are too rare in life, but they show us that the heart really is everything I think the ancients believed it to be. And Wendy, I think we're moving in now to the age of the heart, I like to call it, where I think the earth is kind of in labor, trying to give birth to this whole new world that is going to be dominated not by the brain in our heads, because the brain that is in our heads feels nothing, right? Um, and the brain that's in our hearts is the one that feels. And so I think that's where we're headed, to an exciting new place we have not experienced before.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. I think that, there's so many people that, even myself included, can get stuck in intellectualism and learning and things like that to avoid their emotions, to avoid feeling things. And I think especially with yeah, younger people and so many, just the world in general, it seems like we've had this huge release of fear with the pandemic, and we're releasing, I feel like we're just going through this transition also, where people are getting more in touch with their emotions, desiring to get more in touch with their emotions and free themselves and increase the love in their life and whatnot. But what are some of the signs that people have a heart wall? Can just for because I know you said
Yeah.
93% people have it, but I think a lot of people can go through life feeling generally like they're happy, generally like they don't have a lot of problems, or grew up kind of in a relatively stress-free environment. And what would you say to those people?
Well, there are some physical signs that can be indicative of a heart wall. One of those things can be neck stiffness, neck pain, pain in the traps, or stress up in there in that part of the body. Um, Also, sometimes chest pain. Sometimes because the heart tends to affect the lungs. Of course, they're right there in proximity. Sometimes people can have trouble with uh, they can have lung issues. Sometimes they might have maybe a little bit of asthma or like recurring issues with their lungs. Um, so those are some of the physical things. Um, Emotionally, some of the things I talked about, depression, the worst cases of depression that I have personally seen as a physician, where people were literally having to decide each day that they woke up in the morning if they were going to live one more day, or if that was going to be their last day. I've seen people that bad, that suicidally depressed, turn completely around 180 degrees just by having the heart wall removed, just in a matter of days. So depression is a very big one. Anxiety, sometimes phobias, um, sometimes panic attacks. It just depends. But some other things are, if you feel like it's like some of the things that my wife was feeling, like if you feel sort of numb to emotion, if you feel if you feel kind of isolated, like you don't really belong anywhere, um, if you have a hard time really feeling the emotion of love or the emotion of joy, if it's hard for you to feel positive emotions, we've had people who have told us that for the first time in their life, when that wall was taken down, they could feel the emotion of joy. One lady wrote in, she said she really didn't know what love felt like her whole life. She was in her 50s when she wrote to us. She said after getting her heart wall removed, she suddenly understood what that feeling was. She understood what that emotion was. So it's a very interesting thing. Remember that about 93% of people have a wall. And so the vast majority of people are going through life. They've got this heart wall. Um, it's kind of amazing to me that, we people fall in love and it ends up working for people. But what we find is that um, a couple of interesting things when people are in a relationship, if there's dysfunction, if the relationship is really dysfunctional, and there are probably two heart walls going on there, if one of those walls gets taken down, the relationship may end. For example, my sister was in a long-term relationship with a guy who was kind of mentally abusive and verbally abusive to her. And we all wondered how she could stay in this relationship. And when the wall was taken down, and suddenly she could actually really feel all the venom coming from him, uh, she decided she was out. And within a couple of weeks, it filed for divorce, which I think was the best thing that could have happened to her. I think most of the time relationships improve. If you have a relationship and you clear the heart wall from one of those people, that relationship will change because changing one person changes the other person as well, even if they're not worked on directly. It's really an interesting phenomenon. Um, but I mean, imagine clearing the heart wall from yourself, from your spouse, your partner, so that you both have open hearts. Imagine clearing the heart wall that maybe 90% of your kids have, um, your family members. I mean, um, imagine having a a work team and you're trying to accomplish something. You're trying to create something new. Imagine having this kind of work done on each one of those people in that team, so that their creative ideas can begin to flow. And it's there's just so much potential for this. And we Gene and I have traveled all over the world, and that's part of what we do. I haven't practiced myself for, I think about probably almost 20 years now. She and I travel the world and we teach seminars about this work and so on. And in different places that we've gone to, Wendy, we've had people that have come up to us and who've said things like, I had a near death experience and I saw this heart wall change the world. Or people have told us that they've had visions or dreams where they've seen this change the world. And, um, and we believe it because this is such a hidden thing. I mean, imagine 93% of people roughly have got a wall around their heart. And so it's harder for them to really feel things. We listen to this. We've had people, multiple people over the years who have told us that for the first time in their life, when that wall is taken down, they can feel the love of the creator for them. I mean, you know, how amazing is that?
Let me ask you something a little bit personal. So, how do you get yourself out of a bad mood? So, it can be hard, really, really hard. And it only gets harder the longer that you're in that space. So, that's why I'm a big fan of today's podcast sponsor, Organifi. They made an amazing product called Happy Drops, and they're little gummies that are super tasty. And they can help make your bad moods better and your good moods great. And so I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new when I say the world is really stressed out right now. You can see it everywhere. In stress and mood related visits to the doctor's office are skyrocketing along with various prescriptions to match. And so if you're anything like me, you're looking for a safe, natural approach to rebalancing your happiness and your stress chemicals without worrying about the side effects. Well, Organifi has given us exactly that, and they're called Happy Drops, and they're my favorite new supplement. These yummy little lemon gummies are made with ginger, with gotu kola, and passion flower, all of which are shown to have positive effects on mood and emotional well-being. Plus, they have a real powerhouse ingredient, which is saffron. So why is that so cool? The compounds in saffron are shown to help your brain modulate its levels of serotonin. And serotonin is one of your happy chemicals, and saffron helps your brain enjoy it longer. Saffron also relaxes you. There's many cultures around the world that drink saffron tea before they go to bed because it helps relax them and helps them go to sleep. So saffron also contains antioxidant properties, which can help you protect your brain from oxidative stress. So that's great for detox. So best of all, there aren't any nasty side effects. There aren't any like bad ingredients, and it's safe to use every single day. So saffron's traditionally very challenging to find in the supplement world. It's difficult to plant and to farm. It's even harder to harvest, and that's why it's one of the most expensive ingredients on the planet. But now, thanks to the superfood geniuses at Organifi, we can all enjoy a real dose of real mood-lifting organic saffron for less than $1 a day. So I'm excited for you to try them. I think that everyone should. I love their happy drops. So just go to Organifi.com/Myers Detox. That's ORGANIFI.com/MYERS DETOX and get your happy drops today. And when you use my discount code Myers Detox at checkout, you're going to save an extra 20% off. So again, that's Organifi.com/Myers Detox. I want you to go out and try Happy Drops today. Like I said, I love them. I've been taking them on a regular basis to help me to go to sleep at night, help me kind of relax and get in the mood. You've got nothing to lose but your frown. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, because I definitely felt that same way. I was in my relationship and didn't I was really resistant to change. And so I was depressed and isolated and uh finally decided to do this recall healing, this practitioner that uses emotion code. And I was very familiar with it, but I just hadn't engaged much in it. And within a few sessions, I was ready to fly. I was ready to fly the coop, and I could see where a lot of people are, resistant to doing some type of this deeper work because they know they're going to have major changes in their life, and humans are just generally resistant to that. But I felt the same way. I felt closer to God. I felt more open, more sensitive, feeling more. And I just feel like my energy just completely changed, so much lighter. And it's just been so impactful and it's so simple.
Yeah.
And it's so simple. So can you talk about that? Because I was
Mhm.
working with a practitioner because I she has 30 years of experience in working with emotional trauma and things like that. But you can do it on your own. You don't have to hire someone or do anything. You can get your books and learn how to do it or become a practitioner. But can you, for the listeners, can you just tell us some simple tips of things they can do to open their
Yeah.
heart?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to our site at discoverhealing.com, there's something that we have called the immersion path that you can join that will walk you through the process of releasing a trapped emotion. But it's also in the book. It's actually really simple. So I'm not sure how much time we have left, but I can share a way that your audience can actually communicate with their own subconscious mind, because that's the first thing you have to have a way to talk to the subconscious, because that's where all the good info is, right? So what do you think?
Yeah, why not? Why
Okay,
not?
great. All right.
How to do muscle testing?
Yeah, well, actually there's a form of muscle testing that we call the sway test that actually anybody can do. And so here's how it works. If you think about a plant, if you put a plant in a pot and you put it near a window, if you don't rotate it periodically, it's going to grow pointing outside to the sun, right? Um, the plant will grow towards the sun. By the same token, if they put a plant in a room with uniform lighting and they put a speaker in that room that's blaring really harsh music, really grating, annoying sounds, the plant will grow away from the sound coming out of the speaker. Really interesting. But the body has the same ability. So here's how this works. We call this the sway test. So if you're driving or something right now, you want to try this later. But basically, here's how it works. If you stand up, it works best standing. So if you can stand, just stand up, drop your hands down to your sides, and put your feet about shoulder width apart. Okay, and close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Let it out, and just let yourself totally relax. And as you're standing there, you'll probably begin to notice that it's not really possible to stand perfectly still. You don't even want to try to. But as you're standing there relaxed, you'll notice there's a little bit of movement going on, maybe left or right or at some angle. And that's just your subconscious mind working through the muscles of your body, keeping you standing upright so you don't fall over. So let's think about, we'll start with something kind of negative, okay? A negative thought. And typically what will happen is when you're thinking of something negative, or false or incongruent, what will tend to happen is if you hold that thought long enough, your subconscious mind will start to sway your body backward, almost like it's trying to move you away from that negative or false or incongruent thing. Um, So let's start with the word war. Okay. So as you're standing there totally relaxed, I'd like you to think about that word war for a moment. We hear that word all the time. We've heard that word all of our lives, right? There's been war going on one place or another since probably the beginning of things thousands of years ago. But for a moment, I'd like you to think about what does that word really mean? What's really going on when a war is happening? Uh, what's happening to people? What's happening to families and couples and villages and cities? What's happening to human beings? uh, you know, one group of people that are wearing one color uniform, what are they doing to people that are wearing a different color uniform? And if you think about that for a moment, what it really means on a human level, think about all the tears that have been shed on this crazy planet since the beginning, over all the wars that have been fought, uh, just such insanity. You think about that for a moment. The moment your subconscious mind starts to connect with what you're actually thinking consciously, in that moment, your subconscious mind will start to move you backward. It'll start to sway your body backward away from that thought of war. Now, let's shift gears for a minute and let's think about something really, really positive. So we'll leave the thoughts of war behind now, and imagine that imagine that 1,000 years have gone by. You're living in the future now, and over these last 1,000 years, you've really changed in some huge ways. You're living now in a place where you're surrounded with unconditional love. You've become a being of unconditional love, and the unconditional love that you have in your heart for every being in the world, for everything in the world, is so huge that your heart cannot even contain that love. And that love expands out from your heart and it goes out into the world and it fills every crack and crevice in the world. And it goes out beyond this world and it goes out and it fills the whole universe. Imagine for a moment, as you're standing there totally relaxed, what that would feel like. What would that feel like to be that ascended of a being, to be that advanced? And when you start to subconsciously connect with what you're consciously thinking in that moment, your subconscious will start to sway you forward. And I know a lot of your audience is probably right on their tiptoes right now um because that's what always happens. So we call this the sway test, and it's simply the capacity that the subconscious mind has to move you physically forward or backward, forward for truth or positivity or congruency, backward away from negativity, falsehood, or incongruency. And so, what we can do is we can use this method. Okay. And so, here we have a chart of emotions. Okay. This is the emotion code chart. You can Google this, Google images. There's millions of these probably. You can find one. Anyway, this chart has 60 emotions on it, and it is divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. Okay. Now, we can find an emotion. So the first question that you want to ask yourself is this. Okay. While you're standing there very relaxed, arms down by your sides, feet shoulder width apart, eyes closed, ask yourself this question: do I have a trapped emotion that needs to be released? And allow your body to sway. So just hold that thought in your mind. I have a trapped emotion that needs to be released. I have a trapped emotion that needs to be released. And allow your body to do what it wants to do. And it'll usually take anywhere from 3 or 4 to maybe 10 seconds or so for your subconscious mind to sway, but you will get a yes or a no on this. Now, if you get a yes, the next step would be to go to the chart and ask, okay, I got a yes. Is this emotion in column A? Because your subconscious mind knows exactly what emotion out of these 60 it is. So you can ask, is this emotion in column A? And you can do that right now. And even if you don't know what's on the chart, it doesn't make any difference at all because the chart exists out there in the morphic field, universal intelligence. And so you can ask, is this emotion in column A? That would be the next question. If you get a no answer, that means the emotion is in column B. If you get a yes answer, it means it's in column A. So either way, the next question would be, is it in an odd row? Okay. So in other words, row 1 or 3 or 5. It's kind of a shorthand way to do it. Is it in an odd row? And allow your body to sway. It'll either go forward or backward. If it's column B in an odd row, you'll get a yes. If it's column A in an even row, you'll get a no on the odd row question. But this is basically how you do it. And then you would ask, is it in an even row? If it's not in an odd row, you know it's in an even row. So then you could ask, is it in row 2? Maybe that's a no. Is it in row 4? Well, maybe that's a yes. So by doing it in this way, we're very quickly able to narrow it down to a single cell in this chart. And in each cell is 5 emotions. And at that point, you simply ask, okay, well, let's say that it was in anger, let's say that it was in column A, row 4. Well, we would ask, okay, is the emotion anger? Maybe that's a no. Is it bitterness? Maybe that's a yes. Okay. And so you've identified the emotion. Now, at this point, the next question is, and of course, this is all, detailed in all of the books, the emotion code, the heart code, the body code. The next question is, do we need to know more about this emotion? Because, Wendy, when we identify a trapped emotion and we go through this process, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to close the loop on an emotional experience. And you can think of a trapped emotion really as just being like an open loop. It was an emotional experience that was not allowed to complete for some reason. Maybe the emotion got buried. We didn't want to go there. Maybe it got artificially enhanced because we decided to fly off the handle or whatever. Or maybe the emotion was just overwhelming and we couldn't process it. So we're trying to find those emotional open loops. So to close the loop on an emotional experience, we ask questions. And the first question is, once we identify the emotion itself, the question is, well, do we need to know more about this? In other words, is there more that we need to identify in order for the subconscious mind to be okay with closing the loop on that experience and having it go away? And most of the time, probably 60% of the time, the answer to that question is no. And so in that case, what you can do is you can take your hand, okay? Or if you have a magnet, you can use a magnet, and you just pass your hand or a magnet from your forehead over the top of your head to the back of your neck 3 times. If it's an inherited emotion, that's 10 times. That's a little more complicated, but we won't get into that. Let's see. So if you find out the age, sometimes you might need to find out when trapped emotion happened. That would be the first thing. So when you ask, do we need to know more, closing the loop, that'll be the first thing that we'll do. If the answer is yes, if the subconscious mind comes back and says, yeah, need to know more, we'll figure out when it happened. So then let's say you're working on yourself and maybe you're 50 years old. You might ask, okay, well, did this happen earlier than age 25? Maybe that's a no. Okay, did it happen then? Well, between 25 and 35? Oh, maybe that's a yes. 25 and 30? Maybe that's a no. 30, 31, maybe it's 32 or something like that. You can figure out the year. And oftentimes not always, but oftentimes what happens is when you arrive at the age, often you'll remember, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That was the year that whatever happened. And so you've got emotional baggage from that, whatever it was. And so then you can ask, do we need to know more again, to see if there's anything else you need to, to continue closing that loop. And if the answer is no, you just swipe a few times and release it. And that's as simple as it is, really. Inherited trapped emotions, I'll just tell you really quickly since we're on the topic. If you're taken to a column in a row in the chart and you cannot identify what emotion it is in that particular cell, the question that you ask at that point is this an inherited trapped emotion? And that's what it will be, because that's how we're taken to these. You'll be taken to the column and you'll be taken to the row, but then you won't be able to go any further because you have to identify, you have to become aware that this was actually something that was inherited. And these can go back for 10, 20 generations, sometimes more. And these are really interesting. But if that happens to you, and then you ask, is this an inherited trapped emotion? Then you'd simply go back and find out what emotion it is. And then what you do is you figure out the genealogy, and it's kind of fun. All you need to do is figure out if you got it from your mom or your dad. And then if they got it from somebody earlier, their mom or their dad. And then at that point, you can ask, how many generations does this go back? Does it go back for 10, 15, 20? And you'll get an absolute answer on that. And the only other thing about inherited trapped emotions that you ever need to ask is if it began with a male or a female, because sometimes that ancestor wants you to know. I think that's how this works. And I could tell you stories. We could do a whole show just on inherited trapped emotions because there's some mind blowing stuff about that.
So this episode is brought to you by Chef's Foundry. They've got a fantastic line of cookware called P600. It's totally non-toxic. I think people don't realize that when they're cooking, most people's cookware is adding toxins to their healthy food, that people spend so much money on healthy organic food and then cook it in toxic cookware. And so that includes cast iron, which I do not recommend. It adds way too much iron in a form that we can't absorb. People use aluminum cookware, which is very inexpensive, but it's used at most restaurants, giving us tons of aluminum. People are also using ceramic cookware, which can leach toxins into your food. And not to mention the nonstick cookware. It just has so many PFAS or PFAS that is so toxic. It's one of the forever chemicals. So you really have to pay attention to what you're cooking in. So that's why I recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry, so that you can have peace of mind when you're cooking and you're not getting any nasty chemicals like lead or cadmium or nickel or PFAS in your healthy food. You can get a special discount for my listeners by going to bit.ly/Myers Detox. So that's bit.ly/Myers Detox, MYERS DETOX, to get an exclusive discount just for my listeners. I want you to be thinking about what you're cooking your food in, and I highly recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry. Yeah, and it's really is fascinating when you think about how, of course, we all have inherited trapped emotions, and so much of the negativity that people can experience in their lives and feeling stuck and resistant and not being able to create the life that they want isn't even their stuff.
Yep.
It has nothing to do what happened to them in their life. And that's
And
why
it's
this
so
work is
true.
so important to do, to be aware of it and practice it and release these emotions, because I think it's people are caught in this paradigm where they just feel like, oh, I've had like a really good life. I didn't have any abuse. I had a normal childhood. Like, what is going on? Why am I just feel blah all the time? Why can't I feel joy? Why can't I find the right person, the right job, or whatever they're seeking?
Absolutely. Um, well, I mean, you think about it. Uh, Animals, we know, for example, if you're an elk, and you're in a meadow somewhere on the side of the mountain and you're almost taken down and killed by a pack of wolves, but you survive somehow, and then you have offspring, those offspring will avoid that meadow. They won't know why, but for generations down the line, they'll just kind of go around that area. They won't know why. They won't have any idea. But scientists know that this is happening. They know that it works, that animals somehow pass down uh, this traumatic experience, memory. They don't know how it works, but this is what it is. It's inherited emotional baggage. It's a quantum phenomenon. But the exact same thing happens with human beings. So let's say that your eighth great grandmother was jilted at the altar, and it was so traumatic. The betrayal uh, was so powerful. Her subconscious mind decided, you know what? When I have a child, uh, I'm going to pass this to them because I would not want them to go through what I went through. And so what ends up happening is all that posterity down line ends up having difficulty with relationships and marriage because of what happened hundreds of years ago. And it's the craziest thing. But this is often a big reason why people are stuck with relationships. They can't find happiness. They can't make enough money. They can't do whatever it is. They can't create the life they want because they're carrying that ancestral burden. But what's really amazing about this, and what I think is one of the coolest aspects of it, really is that we believe from testing, the answers that we get are that when you clear an inherited emotion, when you release an inherited emotional energy from somebody, it releases not only from that person, but it also releases from all those people that were holding that energy, no matter how far back it may go, because it's a quantum physics phenomenon that it's really only one energy that all of these people, living or dead, are actually sharing. And so it's pretty wild. But
Yeah, and
anyway, that's what we
yeah.
believe.
And I think that's so amazing because I feel like when I'm doing this work, I was informed when I was doing this work that I'm also helping to release this from my mother, from my daughter, and indirectly helping them as well in ways that they don't, not even going to comprehend. I found that really, really fascinating. And, it's a gift that you give
Yeah.
to your family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is pretty fun.
Yeah, so tell us again, where can people get your book, The Heart Code, and do you have any like free gifts or anything like on your website? I know some authors offer
Yeah,
those.
we do. Absolutely. If you go to my personal page, my personal site is drbradleynelson.com, drbradleynelson.com. You can pre-order the book there, and you can do all of your Christmas shopping right there, and we give you some very special free gifts. You buy 10 copies and we give you a free session, free heart wall session with one of our practitioners. And if you want to buy more than that, then we have different gifts that go you know I can't remember what they all are now, but they're all great and fun. And yeah, and it's think about really what a phenomenal gift this is. It's a Christmas gift, really, because these come out December 2nd. That's when they're going to actually come out to the public. Of course, you can order them on Amazon too, but if you go to drbradleynelson.com, then you can order them and actually get some free gifts too. So yeah, absolutely. We're super excited about this. It's high time that the world shifts to a much higher level of function, and this is a big piece of that puzzle. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. If you buy 10 books, you get a free session so you can
yeah,
experience what it's like doing this work. And it's so simple. Like I said, it's super, super simple and super powerful. And that's what I love. That's what I try to, teach you guys, tips and things you can do for your health that give the highest return on investment. For the money, for your time, for your energy, for your investment. And just that's what I like personally, when I in my own health. But I had just one other question. So, can you talk about creating a heart coherence in the body and how that can help to relieve chronic stress?
well, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, we know that when you're feeling negative emotions, right, that the heartbeat becomes less coherent. We know that when you're feeling positive emotions, like appreciation, gratitude, love, that the heartbeat becomes more coherent. And and there are all kinds of positive effects that flow downstream from that. So we have some theories about this on our own end, and there's research that we're going to be doing before long about the heart wall and about coherence and so on, and how it relates and how removing that heart wall can really increase your heart rate variability and increase your heart rate coherence. So to me, it's about choosing higher vibrations. If you think about emotions, the emotions that are in the emotion code chart are they're really all pretty much negative emotions on here. There's one that's listed called overjoy. That's where you get too excited, basically that kind of thing. But these are all pretty negative emotions. So what I'd like you to think about is that there are emotions that are past based, or in other words, that are that are felt when you're dwelling on past things. And those are things like sadness and sorrow and regret and guilt and so on. On the other hand, there are emotions that are future based. And those are things like fear and anxiety, right? Dread. Um, so if you if you try to be aware of the emotions that you're feeling as you go throughout your day, take stock periodically. Just stop once in a while and think about, okay, what am I feeling right now? Because we're always feeling some kind of emotion. And some of us tend to dwell primarily on past things. And so the emotions that we tend to feel are those past emotions, like sorrow and regret and sadness and, humiliation, things like that. If you tend to be more future based, you'll tend to feel those, more future emotions like anxiety and dread and fear and so on. The importance of living in the moment is that really, if you think about it, the moment is all we have, right? The present moment is really all we have. The future may not happen for us. It hasn't happened yet. It may not happen. Who knows? Um, we all live moment by moment. The past is the past. You can't do anything about the past. Think about it this way. Have you made mistakes in your past? Yes, you have, right? There's no question about that. We all make mistakes. But when we dwell on those mistakes and we allow ourselves to continue to feel the negative emotions about those mistakes, uh, and suffer really for those things that are in the past, there's nothing we can do about those things. And so, as if we continue to put energy into those things that we can't change that are past, um, really, how useless and how fruitless is that? But the point I'm trying to make here about coherence is that, if you're dwelling in the past and you're feeling those past emotions, or if you're feeling anxiety and fear about future things that you're not excited about, then both of those are going to affect your heart coherence. It's a lot easier to make your heart happy and really feel that coherence going on, where your heart's really better able to communicate to your brain and where you're able to be guided more by your heart when you're actually living in the present moment. And think about it this way: if you're just living in the present moment, there's no regret, right? There's no, there shouldn't be really be any anxiety or fear or anything else. It's just the present moment, and that's all we really have. Yeah, I really love Eckhart Tolle's teachings about this, about being in the present. I think he's absolutely right on the nose with this, and that absolutely ties in with heart coherence. Feeling negative emotions immediately has an effect on the heart, and on the other hand, choosing to feel emotions of love and gratitude uh, absolutely improve that heart coherence. If you think about something that's very interesting that I've always thought about is that I believe that we are all here to learn how to have joy. I believe that. I believe that's something that's a scriptural thing in my religion. And how do we do that? Because I've thought about that a lot. Well, how in the world can we have joy when things can go so wrong in our lives? Things can go so badly, and we can have so many problems. How can you possibly have joy? And I think the solution to that really is also a scriptural thing where we're taught in the scriptures, we're told that we should receive everything that happens with gratitude. It doesn't say you should receive the good things that happen with gratitude. Well, that's easy. It's also the hard things. It's everything that happens, everything that comes along in your life. Imagine if you can feel gratitude for everything, and full on sustained gratitude is a frequency, I believe, that's right up there at that same level, very close to pure joy. Isn't that interesting? And I'm reminded of a guru who said, "In my world, nothing ever goes wrong." Right? And obviously, what he meant was not that really nothing ever actually goes wrong, but that everything that happens, um, he chooses to interpret and have gratitude for and learn from, right? So I think these are some of the secrets. I think it's also really, Wendy, I think it's also about forgiveness. I think that I really think that people can't really have true peace in their lives if there's someone that they still need to forgive. I think that that's kind of like a thorn in their side. And until they finally find a way to forgive that person or those people or whatever it was who wronged them, or to forgive themselves, because oftentimes we are the hardest person of all to forgive because we were there and we knew better, or we shouldn't have done whatever we did. We all make mistakes. Um, we all need forgiveness. We all, I think, uh, can find peace by forgiving. And and that's also something that comes from the heart, I think. Um, so it's all about the heart. That's why I like to say we're living in the age of the heart. And the beautiful thing about this work is that it helps you to move beyond all that baggage and really begin to ascend in a vibrational level so that you become more capable really of love, of unconditional love, right? When people die and they go to the other side, they're never ever asked how fancy of a car they drove or how big of a house they lived in. No, 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 never. But they are often asked how big their capacity has become to love others unconditionally. They're asked about that. How much love have you been able to develop? What's your capacity like? Isn't that interesting? I think that's a clue to why we're here. See, and to me, when people talk about becoming an ascended being, um, to me, what that really means is it means becoming capable of unconditional love. And if you think about it, unconditional love solves all the problems. Because if you have this unconditional love, then um, you're not critical of other people. You accept other people wherever they are, whatever's going on, right? You love them unconditionally. Um, and that leads really to total acceptance, which is the fruit, I think, of unconditional love. And so, and that's one of the really beautiful things about this work is that it helps people to move in that direction. And we were at an event recently, and I asked for a show of hands, and I said, how many of you feel like this work is helping you to develop your ability to love others? And yeah, almost all the hands went up. I mean, that's a powerful thing.
So for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com. Yeah. Well, Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for your time and your generosity and your spirit and your work, because it's been so impactful for me, and I wanted to share it with everyone. And again, it's so simple to do and so impactful, and everyone needs to do this work. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for having me on.
Yes. Well, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to the Myers Detox Podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers, and I love doing this show, bringing you experts from around the world to help you to impact your life, to upgrade your life, to help you to love more, to help you to improve your health as well, doing this type of emotional detox work, if you will. So thanks for tuning in.
The Myers Detox Podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.